And when I serve people well, when I show up to be that person of value, as a byproduct, a profit shows up for me. The longer we can keep that our mentality in what we do, the better we show up for our people, the better I find the results to be, and the more fulfilled you are. The second you turn your full focus to profit, it turns into a game where you forget there's human beings involved in the process. And so for me with Pod Pros, like our number one core value is member obsession. And for us, we want to be as valuable for our members as we possibly can. We want to serve them best we can. And the profit that we get from it is a byproduct.
I'm Junaid Ahmed, host of Hacks and Hobbies podcast and a digital presence advisor at HumbleZone. This episode is brought to you by Home Studio Mastery. I launched a consultation and course program to help podcasters and course creators to create a space in their homes that'll reduce the friction of creating content and appearing their best when showing up on camera. The pandemic gave us a lot of issues, but this one is here to stay. We're now so much closer to our audience thanks to video becoming more popular and affordable. I help guide folks who want to create Hollywood-worthy studios to not only capture great content, but also build more confidence, more authority, and be more comfortable in front of the camera. If I can do it, you can too. And with my help, you can do it faster. So if you'd like to learn more, visit homestudiomastery.com and how you too can create a home studio that brings out your personality, professionalism, and possibilities. Thank you for tuning in to Hacks and Hobbies with your host, Junaid. We're visited by our amazing guests coming from all walks of life who want to learn their story, their struggles, and their journey on how they got to where they are today. So stick around. In today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with my good friend, Alex Sanfilippo, the host of the top-rated podcast called Podcasting Made Simple. Alex is the founder of podpros.com, a software company specifically focused on the podcasting industry. With his popular services as Podmatch and Podcast SOP, Alex and his team help podcasters connect with guests and manage their episodes seamlessly. This is going to be an awesome conversation as we dive into the world of podcasting and learn from Alex's expertise. So don't go away. We'll be right back. Alex, thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Junaid, I'm so glad to be here today. I got to mention that my last name, you did it right. Most people are not able to say it. And I'm sure like your name being Junaid, like some people probably don't say your name right as well. So you're probably used to that. But I appreciate the fact that, hey, you knew my name. So thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks so much.
Absolutely, man. What I love is what you've created out of podcasting and being a podcaster yourself and created this beautiful platform called Podmatch. I have gotten such amazing guests from this platform. It's literally been like, why have I not been using this platform from the get-go? So it's really good. And I saw your recent post where you're literally purging inactive accounts, which is really good to know because as we all know, podcasting is something that comes and goes and people might start a podcast for one thing or another. And so I totally love what you're doing there.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate you saying that. That was something I literally posted this morning. And I was for two reasons, but I was really nervous about it. But number one being, it's like counterculture, especially in software. Like software is all the game on for all everybody is like, how big can we get our subscription base? Like how many people can we get there? And so it's counterculture from that regard. But also I was just like, I'm like, man, it was like 40. I'm not the best at math, but 40 some odd, maybe 46% is probably what it was of our entire like member base we actually removed. And that sounds crazy, but if you realize like, if you're listening to this, and you're like, oh, you don't really know podcasting super well, 90% of people stop before reaching 1 year. So we actually have really good retention, like better than the average. And that's because we've built tools around that and stuff. But nonetheless, it's still scary. When you're removing that much, in my mind, I'm like, I wonder if people are going to think this is like, we're having trouble, like, but in reality, the company is booming and growing faster than it ever has. But I appreciate your support with that. It's really good to actually be the first person I've got to talk to about it. So thank you.
100%. And what's crazy is that, you're talking about software companies love to grow. And we can see social media platforms that have grown and what happens with life, right? End of life, people die. And there's actually memorial pages on Facebook when somebody passes away.
Yeah.
and you have to excuse my daughter banging on the door. So give me one quick second. Be right back.
Do your thing.
It's so cute. She's like standing there with her arms behind her back, like I didn't knock the door.
Nice. I love your background, man. By the way, I can tell that we have a lot of the same hobbies by just looking at what's in your background. So that was a cool. I was like going item by item, like looking through it. But anyway,
Awesome. That's one of the reasons I put those things in there. So then there's something to talk about.
Yeah.
All right. So let's get started. Walk us through a memory lane and let's rediscover your origin story. How did it all start? I'm sure there's a few stories in there that brings out your essence. And then, also we'll also talk about, what are your motivations, what keeps you inspired, and 40,000 subscribers down to 24,000, whatever that number was. I think it really goes to show that you're creating, you have created something that's full of value. So
yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah. Thank you for that. I really, really appreciate you saying that. But going back to like my story, and we'll kind of start there, like how I got into being an entrepreneur and tech and all that. But from an early age, it was kind of a weird space to be. And I'll mention I was a self-aware kid, and a lot of kids that are 10 years old aren't as self-aware as maybe I was. And yes, I was probably a really weird kid now that I look back. But anyway, I can remember being 10 years old and having this realization that my brothers, my friends, people in the neighborhood, they were good at things that I wasn't good at. And again, that's pretty self-aware for a 10-year-old, but like my brothers were really good musicians and I didn't have any musical talent. My neighbors were all like really good at sports. I couldn't play any sports to save my life. And then most of them were good at school. And if they weren't good at school, they're really good at video games. But I was actually good at none of those things. And that for me as a 10-year-old kid actually started immediately making me realize like, I wonder if I'm going to be good at anything, right? Like what else is there? That's kind of like the 4 basic groups of everything that matters to a kid, right? And then one day I was actually out on my the golf course across, I said my golf course, like it was mine. It was, trust me, we destroyed that place, but it was across the street from like the neighborhood I was in. There was a golf course and we were never supposed to play out there, but we always did. And so we're all running around the golf course one day and there was a golf ball right there, just in the middle of the field. And there's we knew like the course, we knew to look back at the tee box, and if there's nobody there, the ball was fair game. So like I grabbed it and I was like running around with it. And a couple minutes later, a golfer rolls up on a golf cart and says, "Hey kid, what does that golf ball say on it?" So I turned it around. I was like, "Titleist Pro V1." He's like, "I'll give you $3 for it." And that was the first revelation I ever had of like, oh my gosh, people buy these things and they spend a lot of money on them because my friends are selling lemonade for 25 cents. And so I like realized, I'm like, wait a minute, maybe there's a business here. And this was just me having this idea as a kid. So I told all the friends who were there, I'm like, hey, let's see if we can dig some of these out of the lakes and then clean them up. And then we'll try to sell them on Saturday. Like, let's see if they'll sell them. And we decided to post up at the 7th tee box because that's about the time when a golfer might realize that I'm not going to have enough golf balls to make it through the whole round. And for some reason, as a 10-year-old kid, I thought maybe that was a smart move. Anyway, we cleaned up. We were making a couple $100 every Saturday morning. And this was back in the 90s where that was still pretty substantial, like especially for kids when the rest of the kids were making like $4,
exactly.
Not even covering their costs that their parents were buying the lemonade for. And yeah, the thing is, I realized I was actually really good at that. So like I built a system of, hey, you 3 go look for balls, you go clean them up, we'll organize them here, and then me and this person will sell them together. And yes, I did that from the age of 10 to 12. After that, you're not really cute anymore, so you can't get away with it. Someone's just like, give me that ball. I hit it in the lake last week. Like that's mine. But that was my first realization that I was actually good at something, which just happened to be business or entrepreneurship, if you will. And obviously that wasn't a legitimate business. We weren't paying taxes. Sorry, Uncle Sam. But like it was something that made me realize, hey, this is where I fit in. And the rest was kind of history from there. Like I just had different business ventures along the way, but that's really what kind of kicked it off for me.
Man, that is so funny. So you lived close to the golf course.
Yes.
And you ended up learning about this, like, hey, people would pay money to get a golf ball, which is really, when you're out playing golf, you need something to hit, and those birdies will end up in the lake.
Oh yeah, all the time. And I was shocked at how many we found. I remember even like bringing them home. My dad was like, "You found all these golf balls?" Because at one point we probably had nearly 1,000 golf balls. And granted, I grew up in Florida, so there's a golf course on every corner, like where I grew up. And the thing is, no one's good at it. I mean, there's the handful of people we watch on TV that are actually good, and the rest of them hit like 4 balls in a row into the lake, and they've just got money to waste, I guess. So they'll buy them back. But yeah, that was a really fun thing for me. Like I enjoyed that part of my childhood. It's like one of my fondest memories was actually doing that. And yes, it was technically work, but again, that's just kind of the way that I'm naturally wired. My mom always jokes around. She says, "You came out of my womb with an agenda," is what she said. She was like, "You already had like a thing that you already had stuff you wanted to do and accomplish." She goes, "You were the weirdest kid." But anyway, here we are. And it's actually served me really well into adulthood because that turns out to be far more normal than being a 10-year-old like that.
No, amen, man. That is really amazing to see how you're able to systemize that and be able to see that. And I think what kept you motivated? I know what kept you motivated, but while we're making money, what inspired you? I guess I can point at everybody else was good at something. And like, hey, I really love doing this and I'm good at this.
Yeah, early on, I don't know if I would have been able to identify exactly what it was, but if we fast forward through like high school, I did all kinds of things. I started like flipping action figures on eBay. So I did like all kinds of little things like that. I did some stuff in real estate and had an introduction to doing like a tech startup, even when I was in high school. But along the way, what actually really motivated me wasn't the money, which is actually kind of weird because most entrepreneurs, that's kind of like number one. And some people say you won't be a good entrepreneur unless you're highly motivated by money. But I've actually money has never motivated me. Like it just still to this day, I don't really care. And maybe it's because I live pretty minimal. I don't need a lot. I don't really care about that stuff. I wear t-shirts and flip-flops, like, and like, I don't feel the need to go past that really, if you will. But what's always really motivated me is the art of building a system. I love creating systems. I love building something out of nothing and watching it work. There's something about that art of like creating in that way that really inspires me and gets me amped up, gets me excited. And so I think that my motivation behind it initially was just the fact of I love building a system and then watching it play out. And I don't know if that's like a good inspiration to have or motivation necessarily, but that's something that's just always been enjoyable for me. And to me, everything I've done has always started off as a hobby. Like I've never succeeded in anything. Let's put it that way. Jumping into it with it being, this is going to make me money. This is going to be a business. This is going to be that. It's always been, this is fun. Let's see if we can build a fun system around it to make it even more fun. And that's always been the way I've started almost anything I've done that has been successful.
The key that I'm listening is you got to have fun. And when you have fun, people see that fun exuding out of your body, your aura, and people are then attracted to it because who doesn't like fun?
Right. So true. And I feel like we live in a world that's having less and less of it. So when people see someone who's like passionate and motivated and like just enjoying what they do every single day, it is contagious. For me too, I'm not saying that it's just people coming to me, but like, Junaid, like what you do, like helping people set up like a home studio is a really cool thing. And you're super passionate about it. I love just following your journey on it. Like I've got a setup. I had it before I met you, but everything in me is like, man, I just want to like work with this guy, get him over here and have him set up even better. So I can just get some of that passion and that excitement in it. Right. So you're another one of those people that people just kind of magnetically cling to because of what you're doing. You love. And I just think that type of thing is very rare in the world today.
Yeah, man, you're absolutely right. And the more I think about it, I like the system idea as well. I'm thinking in the back of my head, how can I work with Alex to build a better system? And when people see that system, the little bit of system that I have created around my podcast, because hey, I wanted to simplify it for myself, and I simplify it for the guests that they're getting reminders, they're getting what to expect with the episode. All of that system, I didn't know from the beginning. I learned from somebody else and I was able to implement it. And now people call me and, they would get that email response like, wow, dude, your system is really cool.
It's very
I don't
well
get
done.
them as much anymore because, people expect it because I've had over 400 episodes. So they expect that there's a system in place. But in the beginning, they were like, oh, dude, that's so cool. You just have 50 episodes.
I think when I first got the email, because what we're explaining for everyone who's listening who's not familiar, basically, Junaid, when you like when I get accepted as a guest, I obviously go into some sort of automation that you've developed because you're not sending out this video every single time, but I'm automatically getting an email with a video explaining like the interview, how to set it up. And I'm like watching this, I'm like, dang, this is so good. I'm like, watch. And granted, you have the episodes to show for it. Almost nobody reaches the success that you have in podcasting as far as like episodes and stuff like that. So yes, it is kind of expected, but still super impressive.
Thank you, man. I appreciate that. And these are the little things that we aim for, those little accolades that we hear from our friends and our colleagues and people in our circle that lights us up and that keeps us inspiring, keeps us coming back. I'm like, okay, I'm doing something right. Let's keep doing that.
Man, you had a great interview. I just want to shout one out because I always love to, like, if I listen to an interview that I find inspiring on a podcast, I love to shout it out if I can. So it was episode, I wrote it down. It was episode 433 with Hala. And you talked about growth and monetization of her podcast and her network and stuff like that. She has such a crazy story. Just like, I feel like just pivoting to success, to success, to success to where she is today, which is what she ultimately wanted to do. And you did a great job getting the full story because I've actually known Hala for years at this point. I've not heard her share half of that. And I was like, do I even know who this is? And Junaid, like you like brought it out. So I encourage everyone, go back and listen to episode 433 with Hala. Really well done. So I just want to shout that out real quick because I got a lot out of it. So thanks for putting that episode together.
Absolutely. I was really glad when she said yes. And I just got lucky in working with her to set up her studio in Jersey City. And it was through another connection. It's like, hey, Junaid, I know you're doing studios and Hala needs a studio. Can you help? I was like, hey, I would love to go up there. So I got to help her. And then as we're sitting there, after, we did some work, like, okay, it's time for dinner. So we just sat down and we're all quiet. And I'm like, you know what? I'm a podcaster, dang it. I'm going to ask this question. And I asked her, what got you started? And she's like, well, thanks for asking. And then my buddy who's there, he's like, dude, thanks for asking that question. I was scared to ask that question. We're talking to celebrity. Yeah. And it was just fun. It was just fun listening.
That's really cool. Podcasting brings you a level of boldness that nothing else does, right?
I know. It's like either you have a chance now or you're never going to have a chance again. I mean, you never know what's happening next. I mean, what we were just experienced Hurricane Ian down in Florida, which created so much havoc. And we got to take our time and we got to maximize each moment that we get.
I agree. Couldn't agree more, man.
Dude, so you've been running an amazing company, PodPros. Talk to us about how that got started.
Yeah, so like I said, pretty much everything I've done that succeeded has been from the standpoint of a hobby. And to backtrack a little bit, yes, I was an entrepreneur from the age of 10. I did stuff through high school, got into real estate, did some investing and all that. But when the economy just took a turn back in 2006, 7, 8, like those years, I got out of real estate investing and I was like an 18-year-old kid at this point. So it sounds funny to even say like investing in real estate at that age, but I went from being like really successful for my age to being like really in debt very fast. And so I got into a corporate job from in an industry that wasn't getting hurt. So I jumped into the aerospace industry. It wasn't really negatively affected by everything that was going on in that whole recession back then, at least where I was focused. And I should mention, I wasn't a skydiver, wasn't a fighter pilot, and I wasn't anything else interesting. What I was just a guy who worked behind a computer. And I worked my way up from being a part-time receiving clerk to a senior director on the executive team, running the commercial operations division. And I loved it. This was a 15-year career. Toward the end of it, when it went public, it was a multi-billion-dollar organization. I lost the passion for it. I still worked really hard. And I'll say this, my last year and my last day there were like my best. I left on good terms. They invited me back to speak 6 months after I left. They don't do that for people who leave on bad terms, right? Like I crushed it because I'm a firm believer the way you end one season is the way you begin the next. And I wanted to start the next one in a good way. But anyway, going to the story of how I got into podcasting, PodPros being the main organization, what I have here is while I was there the last few years, again, not really being as interested anymore, I decided, I think I want to be an entrepreneur, but I want to make that interesting and fun. Like, how do I do this? So I started a podcast. Junaid, like this was, I think, a stroke of genius that I didn't even realize I had. But I was like, I don't really know how to do this anymore because I've been in corporate for so long. I'm going to interview people who have successfully left a 9-to-5 job to be a full-time entrepreneur, and they're going to talk to me about how they did it. Yeah. And to me, that was like, I was like, this is free coaching because, like we're just talking about Hala. Like if you wanted coaching from her for an hour, she's going to charge you thousands of dollars for that, but she'll come on your podcast for free. So it's like one of those things of like, I can get these people to show up and talk for a little bit. I'll learn. And hopefully other people who listen will learn as well. Anyway, like two things happened. One, I learned how to become an entrepreneur, but two, I fell in love with the podcasting industry. Like there's so many kind people in this industry. It has an abundance mindset, which is what my corporate job was missing. It was very cutthroat, very competitive. So like making that shift was like, man, I want to be an entrepreneur. I now know how to do it. And I want it to be in podcasting. So actually what I ended up launching was Podmatch was our initial company. And the whole idea behind Podmatch, if you're not familiar with it, it's a service that connects podcast guests and hosts together automatically for interviews. So if you're looking for a specific guest and someone has that expertise that you're looking for, our system will automatically match them. It literally works just like a dating app, but instead of connecting people for dates, it connects them for podcast interviews. And we built that out because when I got started, again, Sharon, I just shared that whole thing about me being a corporate guy. I didn't have a lot of entrepreneurial friends. They were all corporate people. So I could have like lined it up for months with like corporate people. But when I came to entrepreneurs, I knew 3 people. So I had all 3 of them on. I invited all 3 back. I invited all 3 back again. And they all said, dude, go get some more friends. And so like I started like the whole grind of trying to find guests. And thankfully my show did really well from day one. So I started building the ability to get those guests. But that was always in the back of my mind. I was like, what if my show didn't take off so fast? Like maybe I wouldn't have been able to find guests. Yeah. And I validated that problem years later with other people in podcasting. And that's what led us to launching podmatch.com and helping people find those guests and hosts, like make that connection. And later on, we changed the name of the entire organization to Pod Pros because we started building other solutions as well. And I don't like to spread myself too thin. I like systems. So I'm like, Pod Pros, the organization, and then our products and services will be under it. And that's kind of like the story of how this whole thing came to be.
Dude, I totally love that because I'm seeing a lot of mirroring in how I've done things too, where I started a podcast and I'm building systems that I build this podcast, but having a little bit of experience in web development and user experience for the past 20 years, I was like, hey, I know how to do all of these things. How can I connect all these things together? And then the final piece of the puzzle came to me during the pandemic where I built my home studio. So now I was like, okay, I can offer all of these services and package them on how to build your digital presence. So it's coming together. I'm still working on all of the materials and put it together, but it's something that was in the back of my mind, how can I do this for others that I've done for myself?
And it's so needed, man.
In a really fun way.
Yeah. And like, first off, you love it. And I think that's great, but also it's so needed. Like, let's go back to before 2020. Like no one really cared what the background looked like. Not saying it didn't matter because it's always mattered, but it just wasn't it was okay if you didn't do it. But now if you want to stand out, because we're all on video conferencing calls, we're all doing this. If you want to be the one that people remember, then you have to do something different. And I'll be real, man, my setup is so simple. Like for people that are just listening, I have like a gray piece of photo paper with LEDs hitting it and a Shure MV7 mic and some other lights to help. I'm not good at this, Junaid, as you know. So like, but like I got all the stuff I need. This took me like 8 months to figure out. It was miserable. It's before I knew you. Like I hated every second of it because it's just not my area of passion. I would have loved to have known you and that you've been like, hey, let me help you do that. And then again, like one, to get like set on fire and passionate about all of my stuff that I don't even know what it's all called right now. Right. But like, what you're doing now, I think is so needed. And I know that like, I feel like you've got all the pieces right there, man. Like it's just a matter before this whole thing just blows up, what you're doing in a good way. So.
Absolutely. And I'm really glad to have had the background, because that's the other thing that a lot of people are missing, like having that passion for the tech, for showcasing. And I was an introvert 10 years ago. I was like, I don't want to show up on camera. I don't know. My audio takes time. It takes a lot of personal development. And I think you've done a lot of that through the podcasting industry. And I've done a lot of that as well. And being in masterminds, I think that's another level up that's helped us to get to this level.
Yeah, it definitely is. Like having that tribe around you is so important. There's the old saying that a rising tide lifts all ships. And I believe that's true from an industry standpoint, but from a peer perspective, it's even more powerful. When you get a room full of 1,000 people, like you might get motivated and inspired in a room like that. I'm not talking down about like going to some sort of motivational conference, but you're going to leave and not be super changed because no one's going to remember that you were there. But if you're part of a mastermind, you're meeting on a regular basis, there's 10 or 12 people in that room. That's a different level because you know that you're gonna have to face those people again, right? Like, and that the rising tide in that level lifts all ships a lot faster, I feel like, because it's a smaller room, it's more intimate. For me, I would not be where I am today if it weren't for the masterminds I've been in. Or for me, like I have a background of like being involved heavily in church, and like I've always just been inspired in that way. And like for me, being even in my church small groups, that's always been helpful for me. I play soccer, so like I'm on a team, like all that stuff. Like I'm a better soccer player because of the guys I'm around. It's so true. And I think that in podcasting or any form of content creating, it is a very lonely road. And there's so many like shiny objects and resources out there that we kind of just bounce around a thing, but you'd be better off getting in a tribe. Even if there's no one with the exact expertise you're looking for, I think you'll be able to figure it out on your own a lot faster by doing something more like that. And so to me, I can't speak highly enough about the small group setting.
I love it. I totally love it. And some of the features in the mastermind, you're kept accountable. Like, hey, we're going to work on this thing this week, or, did you do it? And you kind of have that little guilt feeling. Okay, I got to get this done because, my buddy's here expecting And it's a totally different kind of level of connection that you build as well.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a quick break. I've loved your story. I love you being an entrepreneur at age 10. I've got a little bit of that happening with my son as well. He's like, hey, I want to launch a YouTube channel. Can we sell these Pokemon cards? Can we do some of my toys and get some other toys? It's so fun to see that. And I'm trying to get them to think from that perspective. I had my son read Rich Dad, Poor Dad
Nice.
for the teen version. And we just picked up the board game called Cash Flow, which teaches you how to get out of the rat race and, do either real estate investment or do stocks and, just understand that money is not something you live for. It's something that is a tool that enables you to do even more things. So after the break, Alex is going to share with us 3 hacks to take away. We'll be right back. I'm Junaid Ahmed, host of Hacks and Hobbies podcast and a digital presence advisor at HumbleZone. This episode is brought to you by Home Studio Mastery. I launched a consultation and course program to help podcasters and course creators to create a space in their homes that will reduce the friction of creating content and appearing their best when showing up on camera. The pandemic gave us a lot of issues, but this one is here to stay. We're now so much closer to our audience thanks to video becoming more popular and affordable. I help guide folks who want to create Hollywood-worthy studios to not only capture great content, but also build more confidence, more authority, and be more comfortable in front of the camera. If I can do it, you can too. And with my help, you can do it faster. So if you'd like to learn more, visit homestudiomastery.com and how you too can create a home studio that brings out your personality, professionalism, and possibilities. Hey guys, welcome back. We've been speaking with Alex Sanfilippo. He's the CEO over at, I don't know, is it CEO?
I still go with founder. I don't actually know where the line is.
All right, founder.
Yeah, founder. Like Junaid, there's probably like a line of when someone's like, you're no longer a founder, you're CEO, but I actually don't know where that line exists. So it's out there somewhere. If anyone knows, please reach out to one of us and let us know we can find out what I actually am and what Junaid is as well, because you're something as well.
Exactly. We're both something. We love what we do. We're very passionate human beings. And my kids just starting playing soccer. And when you mentioned soccer earlier, having a community, having a team around you that motivates you, that inspires you to bring your best, I think is a place that we all like to be. And for entrepreneurs, mastermind is that team game where join a mastermind, no matter what you're trying to grow, that's something that's going to enable you to really level up and find other people that also going through the same journey. I always mention something around, hey, we're all on this freeway. We're all on different freeways, and you want to hang out with people that are on the same freeway as you are, because then you can point at things and you can see where they're going and how they're doing it, how they're driving the car, so that you can get better and grow as well.
I love that.
Alex, you have 3 hacks to share for the audience, for the superpreneurs on the Hacks and Hobbies podcast. Let's hear them.
Yeah, the first one, I'm excited about these. The very first one is to do things that don't scale. Do things that don't scale. I think that many of us as founders or CEOs or whatever it is that we want to call ourselves, right? We end up in a place where we develop such good systems or teams around us, or kind of build this wall between us and people because we're afraid to get hurt if we're newer, right? Like you don't want someone to talk bad about what you're doing. But the best thing that I found that you can do is do things that don't scale. And to me, what that means is getting on some sort of one-on-one phone call, video conference call, text message, email thread, whatever it is, or social media messaging, whatever it is, but with somebody who's actually using your product or service, somebody who's actually using it. To me, I think that nothing beats the face-to-face interaction, and in person isn't always realistic, but if you can do a video conference call with somebody, that's something that does not scale. You can't do 300 of those a week, right? But you can say, you know what, every week I'm going to try to get on 5 calls with these people that are using my product or service and ask them about their experience. Just have a conversation, no agenda to upsell them, nothing like that. Just say, how's it going? Are we helping you? What else can we do? What are your thoughts about this? Is there anything else you're struggling with? Going through questions like that. Again, it does not scale, But in my mind, there's nothing better to do, because what I see too many people do when they go from founder status to CEO status, or they build all these systems, they build that wall between them and people, is they lose touch with who their customer actually is. And as soon as you start losing touch, you start building the product or service or company in the wrong direction. And that's how people start becoming irrelevant in a market. You want to stay relevant, do things that don't scale. Talk to the people that are using your product or service.
Dude, that's a really good one. It's almost like you have a software development company or something.
Right. And I do my best to talk to people. I still do this. I will never stop. I'm like, I won't get on the call with everybody. And over time, you get better at identifying the people that you shouldn't talk to. There's some that reach out saying they want a phone call. And when you look at it, you know that they're the wrong person to talk to. And sometimes you'll get on these calls and someone will send you down a wrong direction. And it takes some foresight, takes some actual discernment of yourself to know where someone wants you to go. Like example, someone said, hey, Podmatch specifically should be a hosting provider. Man, we match people for guests, like for interviews, right? Like guests and hosts for interviews. That's what we do. That's not good advice from somebody. Now, well-meaning, but if I was just trying to keep everyone happy, like, yeah, let's start building that. No, we're just going to recommend Buzzsprout. We like Buzzsprout, right? Like that's what we're going to do. So I think this is like a really important point. You got to have some self-discernment, like and stuff like that, and understand where your product or service is going in the same process of doing this.
Man, I love that. So have a conversation with people that are using your services so you can get feedback. Hey, how am I doing? How can we do better? And then that way you provide even better service to the current customers. And that kills the churn, right? They're now going to stay with you a lot longer, and you have to spend less money on acquiring new customers. I love that.
Yeah, that's a good point there. Moving on to number 2 here. Is that all right if I jump right into it?
Oh, yes, please.
Cool. Number 2 is to start ugly. Sounds weird, but I learned it from a friend of mine named Chris Cremitzo. So you talked about Podfest earlier. He's the guy who puts on Podfest. He's like the main person behind it. He's the CEO of that company. Yeah. And he wrote a book called Start Ugly. It really inspired me. Let me explain what it means. If you're wanting to start a podcast, you're wanting to launch a business, you're trying to get a book out there to the world, take your next step as fast as you possibly can. Just start ugly. You don't need, like, Junaid, like your setup is beautiful. I would not tell somebody to wait to start until they look like you, or until they do the process the way you do it. Just start where you are today with what you have. Yes. Start ugly. But then what's important is you can't just say start ugly and leave it at that. You next have to focus on continuous improvement. So for me, I didn't do this right. It took me 9 months to launch a podcast. It probably takes about a week in reality. It's really all I needed, but I wanted the right gear. I wanted this. And I have 9 months basically where I could have been growing the show, but instead I was sitting behind the scenes doing nothing. What would have been better is from day one, launch it and then say, okay, I need a better mic. You know what? People are saying that the episodes are too long. Let me make it shorter. Instead of saying, let me do all this research and data before, because at the end of the day, whatever you're launching doesn't need to be a podcast. You don't really know what's going to happen or what the reaction is going to be until you launch it. So yes, do your due diligence, but do it as fast as you can. Start ugly, then focus on continuous improvement.
Man, I love that. Continuous improvement. Even if that improvement is 1% every day.
Yes.
It stacks up to 376%. No, I think it's a lot more than that.
It's going to, hey man, whatever it is, I'm not a math guy. So,
right. It's an exponential growth no matter what, 1% improvement every day. So
yeah,
keep improving.
It turns into a lot in just a little bit of time. I agree with that 1% thing. I tell people, like, don't focus, because I'm in the podcasting space. So I use that as an example. Some people are like, how do I get 10,000 people to listen to my podcast? I'm like, get one new listener every day for a handful of years, right? Like, and then you'll have that, like, just one new listener. Like, can you do that? You can take 20 minutes and find somebody who's interested in your show, build a relationship, and then you're done for the day. And that's why I recommend to everybody. So yeah, start ugly, focus on continuous improvement.
I love that. Sweet. Oh my God.
So number three, this is my favorite one. And it's this: seek to be a person of value, not a person of profit. Seek to be a person of value, not a person of profit. I mentioned earlier, I had like a background in church and stuff like that. So for me, like, I pulled this from Jesus, from the Bible, like, just to seek to be that person of value. Like, he didn't show up to be served. He showed up to serve others. And I think the longer that us as founders can show up saying, I'm not doing this for the paycheck, and actually mean it, but say I'm showing up to serve people. And when I serve people well, when I show up to be that person of value, as a byproduct, a profit shows up for me. The longer we can keep that our mentality and what we do, the better we show up for our people, the better I find the results to be, and the more fulfilled you are. The second you turn your full focus to profit, it turns into a game where you forget there's human beings involved in the process. And so for me with Pod Pros, like, our number one core value is member obsession. And for us, we want to be as valuable for our members as we possibly can. We want to serve them best we can. And the profit that we get from it is a byproduct. Like we talked early on about doing that big member purge. Again, 40 some odd % of our entire database, removing it. That hurts us a little bit financially. Like, and that was one of the things I'm like, man, that's kind of like a cut on our end, but is better for the people. And if we're going to truly add value to them, this is in their best interest, even though it's going to temporarily set us back a little bit. But man, seek to be a person of value, not a person of profit. It's the best piece of advice I could give to anybody who's getting into entrepreneurship.
Man, I love that so much. It actually reminds me of the book by Adam Grant called Give and Take. And in the book, he talks about there's really two types of people. There are givers, actually three types. There's givers, takers, and people who want to return your favor, tit for tat kind of thing. And then they listed all the people in a chart. And a lot of people were like, hey, the takers are going to be on the top of the chart. Well, takers fell right below the tit for tat people. And then on the bottom was givers, but guess what? On the top were also givers. So number of money, number of value that they're able to bring, because the more you give, the more followers or the more relationships you're going to build with the people. So giving, and then asking, right? Like Gary Vaynerchuk's book, Jab, 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 Hook. You know, it's all about giving, and then asking for a favor back. But givers don't even think about asking for it because they just have so much fun by just giving away all their time, all of their belongings. In fact, there was a story in there, which was later I come to learn that was Abraham Lincoln. He had the opportunity to go for the presidency. So every time he was running, somebody else wanted to run. He's like, you know what? Go ahead, you take it. And 8 years later, when he went to run, he had a lot of supporters around him that enabled him to become the president.
Wow. That's a really relevant story what I just shared. I think that's so good. And like that Adam Grant book, what was it called again? I think people
Give
listening
and
should
Take.
grab that. Give and Take. Yeah. I've not actually read that. I need to grab a copy for myself, but I just think that's exactly what I'm talking about. So I love that you reinforce that. Thank you for sharing that.
Absolutely, man. I'm here to share all the stuff that we've learned over the years. And like you said, you know, when we grow a percent at a time, in our mind, it seems very minuscule, but over the long period of time that we've been in the process, it's monumental for somebody who's just getting started. So I love the fact that, you know, start ugly, give value, and continuously grow so that you're a better person in the future.
Yeah, man. Love it.
Awesome. All right, let's jump into the 6 questions I like to ask my guests. Number 1, what is the one hobby that you wish you got into?
So fun fact, my favorite thing to do is play soccer. I didn't start playing soccer till my late 20s. So if I could go back, I would have started that really young. But going with something totally different, like a hobby I never did, and I don't even know if this really counts as a hobby, but I think I actually would have been a really good Formula One driver. And we have like a few go-kart places in Florida, like that are like really fast go-karts, the ones that go like 65 miles an hour. And for a long time, like I held records at some of them, and I would just jump in randomly. Friends like, you want to go? I'm like, sure. And that like get like the fastest guy on the track. Like one was like a really big record that apparently I had broken, and didn't think anything of it, but just like the way to move on a track made sense to me. And I always was very fascinated by it. But I think I'm probably too old to get into Formula. Also, that hobby, my parents would have needed to be making a little bit more money, I think, to invest in a hobby like that. But I think that would have been really cool. I think I actually would have been good at it and probably really enjoyed it.
Well, dude, next time I'm coming to Florida, we got to go karting because I love go-karting.
Let's do it. I'm all in, man. Sounds like fun.
All right. I love that. Next question. What did you want to be when you were a child?
So this was a fun one. I loved Westerns as a kid, like Western shows, all that stuff. And my mom one day asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And I said, I want to move to Texas and be a cowboy. And she then crushed my dreams, because it turns out they had electricity and cars in Texas as well. And as like little kid, like I just figured like this is happening right now in Texas. I'm going to be a cowboy. I'm going to ride horses. And anyway, so that shattered my dreams. The next thing I'd say was going back to that story of selling golf balls. Like when I started doing that, I just realized I want to be an entrepreneur. So I think from day one, I just wanted to do something like that.
Nice. I love that. And you know, there's a lot of ranches around here where you can actually go and be a cowboy. I think that's something you can do now too. I love riding horses. The first time, like always wanted to ride horses. The first time that I ever got to was on our honeymoon in 2006. The
Okay.
second time that I got to ride the horse was just last year when we went to Colorado. And I'm like, why am I having such huge gaps in the middle? So I'm going to make more proactive effort on actually going and riding some horses.
Fun fact about me, I'm scared to death of the things now. My parents, like when I was a little kid, like when I was young, they were not well off or anything like that. But now both my parents are like really successful. My mom lives in South Carolina, like in the middle of nowhere, but she has horses and like they're rideable and stuff. She's always like, "You want to ride them?" And I won't even touch them, man. I'm scared of them now. So that cowboy ship has long sailed for me.
It's long sailed. I'm an entrepreneur. I love it. All right, next question. What is your favorite movie or TV show?
So first off, I don't really like TV shows too much,
Okay.
but I do want to mention because my favorite thing ever is a TV show. I love The Office. And the reason I don't like TV shows, I'll mention, it's the same thing when you're like, oh, I don't want a candy bar. Like I don't want a full-size Snickers because it's just too much candy. So you buy the little pack that has like the miniature ones in it and eat like 12 of them. I'm like, you ate like 3 or 4 candy bars. And like, it's the same thing with TV. Like people make the excuse. They're like, oh, I don't want to watch a movie. They're too long. So I'll watch a TV show. I'm like, you watched 8 episodes in one night. Like that's 8 hours instead of like 2, you know? So I've always been a movie guy because it helps me be like, cool, I get to start and end a story because I love to achieve things. So I watch a TV show. I'm probably, I don't let myself do this, but I could probably sit there and watch a whole show all the way through because I just want to like know what's going on. So I'm a movie guy, but I will say my favorite in the day, I love The Office. Maybe it's because I worked in an office and that was always fun. And they're just short, like 20-minute episodes. So
it's related as well, right?
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Then what movie would you choose if you got to play a character in it?
James Bond. I mean, I'd love to be James Bond. I mean, come on, that's an easy one for
me.
Okay,
James Bond movies. There's been I can't remember the number, but there's been a lot of different James Bond.
Good point. I'd like to be the latest Daniel Craig James Bond.
Okay, Daniel Craig James Bond. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, come on, look at those sweet cars, look at the cool guns. I mean, I'm married, but look at the cool girls, you know, like there's all that.
Yeah. My first experience with James Bond was with Pierce Brosnan. And he was like very teched out, right? But then Daniel Craig just took it up a notch, and like he was he felt more athletic than the previous James Bond. I don't know what it was. Maybe it was.
Yeah, Pierce, when I remember like watching that as a kid, I'm like, man, he's beautiful. I could never look like that, you know? And then like Daniel Craig, I'm like, he's kind of like, he's athletic. He's kind of messy. I'm like, I could do that, you know? But obviously James Bond is so unrealistic because Daniel Craig, the guy who plays Bond, like broke multiple bones pretending to do something that this guy does, right? So there's how unrealistic James Bond actually is.
Yeah, it is pretty insane. Our next up, who is your favorite superhero?
Man, I never got really, when I was a kid, I loved all this stuff. So like I was a big Batman fan. I always joke now when people ask me this question that Thanos is my favorite superhero. And then people get super angry because like, he's not a superhero, he's a villain. But I always joke about it. But you know, if I could go just can I just talk about the superpower itself? Because there is one that's always stood out for me. So the superpower, I don't know if you remember this movie. I think it came out like the late, like maybe 2006, 7 or 8 or something like that. And it was called Jumper. And it was a movie. I remember
that one. Oh, yes.
I know you're a Star Wars guy, so I had the same guy who played Anakin in it. The movie itself was okay, but the superpower they had was if the person thought of someone they had seen or been before, they could immediately transport themselves to that space.
Yeah.
And if you think about it, like, dude, I was just in Italy for 12 days with my wife. I would love to be able to just, you know, snap of a finger, transport back over there and go to lunch real quick and transport right back and have this interview with you. Like that to me, I'm like, is there a cooler superpower? And also, I wouldn't be a tech founder. I would be somebody who has a courier service. I'd literally be like, you need this there in the next 10 minutes? Give me $1,000. I'll get it there for you, right?
Oh, my God. That's so true.
Anyway, that's kind of like the superpower that like in my head, I'm like, that would be the coolest thing in the world to have because I could go for like a margarita on the beach right now. So I need to like get over there.
Yeah, that movie came out in 2008. Hayden Christensen was the person who played that character who basically instantly transporting himself. And literally they were teleporting, right? With their mindset. And one of the superheroes that can do that is Nightcrawler. He has the same ability.
Really?
To teleport from.
See, I don't know this stuff. Now I need to look up Nightcrawler. I'm writing down. So far you gave me a board game to look up and a superhero.
Yeah, Nightcrawler has that same capabilities, teleport. I think he was in the first or second X-Men movie where you could see his powers at display. It's really cool. All right,
I will
next.
be checking that out.
Awesome. I love it. Last question. If you were a board game, what would it be?
I'm going to go with chess because
Okay.
I'm pretty strategic. I never move as quick as most people when it comes to, at least from a business perspective. Like
Yeah.
I'm usually like slow and steady wins the race. And it's just kind of like, it's a giant chess game for me.
Yeah.
Example, a lot of people want to launch Podmatch immediately started throwing me to, can't remember the name of the book, but anyway, the whole idea was like scaling really fast. So like, hey, if in 3 years you want this business to be worth like $10 million, here's what you do. And just going back to being a person of value instead of person of profit, a lot of it just didn't align. So strategically, I'm like, well, I could do that in 5 years, but I could take care of people the whole way. And it'd be like a good experience for us all, not just for me. And I also didn't want to work that hard. I'll be honest. Like I love being an entrepreneur, but I love having fun. If I'm working 90 hours a week and it's like just brutal work, that doesn't sound interesting to me.
No.
I show up well for my people because I love what I do. So anyway, I would say chess. Like it was a longer answer you're looking for probably, but that's why.
I like the answer and I like the explanation, and I like that a lot, having fun and really providing the value and bringing it to the people. I love all of that. Where can the superpreneurs listening to this episode find you?
Yeah, everything. I really appreciate you having me again. I mean, I'm a fan of yours. I'm also a fan of Hacks and Hobbies. I love everything that's going on here. So thank you again for having me. Where you can find out more about me, like we were talking about, like the parent company, I'm doing like air quotes there, right? Is PodPros. So if you go to podpros.com/win, I actually set up a quick little page. If you're interested in being a podcast guest or podcast host or are a podcast guest or host, I've got some little bonuses there for you. It's like 5 quick wins. It should take you less than 5 minutes to read. And I think it'll actually be really helpful for everyone. So that's podpros.com/win. And then the navigation's there. You can find everything else I do from there. I'm pretty easy to get in contact with from that hub, if you will. But again, this is the place to be. I really appreciate it.
I love it, man. Thank you so much, Alex. This was a ton of fun. Got to learn a lot more about you and how we can even work together in the future. And that's something that I love to do with my guests, because building relationships is my favorite thing to do. And I didn't know that I had this till I started podcasting. It's been a really awesome revelation for myself as well. So thanks again for your time. Guys, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you in the next episode. Thank you for listening to this Hacks and Hobbies episode. Junaid would love to hear from you, so please leave a rating or a review on Apple Podcasts. Visit hacksandhobbies.com to find additional information on the guest today, as well as the show notes.